If you had at least 3 inches, at least, maybe I would want you. Maybe condoms would stay on, but I don't think you need condoms. You could probably just use kitty balloons, those string ones to make little balloon animals. Just see, maybe.
You should look at that, bitch.
Get the out of my house. Get the out of my house.
Okay, Sistas fans, it's time to talk about the cliffhanger ending of last week's episode of Sistas. First of all, hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving holiday and just in general, a holiday weekend that was great. I know it is Monday. It is difficult to get back into the zone of working again. Man, oh man, so this is going to be a rough one. I don't know why I decided to tackle this video first when it came to recording, but might as well. And it's a good thing I waited to do this, mainly due to the fact that I know that on Wednesday night leading into Thursday, Mignon, aka the actor that plays Danni, she posted some things on social media, and, she retweeted people who were, pretty much in agreement about Danni not taking blame for what happened. And what I'm going to do is I'll try to put her post in the video so you can see it right now. I want to go over my thoughts, and just like a disclaimer up front, I just want to say that off the rip, Jonah had no reason to put hands on her. I don't think that Danni deserved to get called out of her name, first of all. And I don't think that she deserved to get slapped. And I know people are going to be like, okay, Jeremy, with the next sentence, I bet, what you're about to say kind of negates your little disclaimer. Well, I will say this. I think Danni made a mistake going out with this guy in the first place. Again, she did not deserve to get called out of her name or slapped. I'm saying she ignored a ton of red flags that Jonah literally had waving, on the flagpole, just literally waving around. But she didn't really care. Danni was more willing to participate in her own little hot girl summer and, get free food and drinks in order to forget about her worries, Hakuna Matata, in regards to the Sabrina situation. And you could also argue that this is possibly a way for her to kind of cope with the whole Preston thing. So let me just say, what I want to do here is read Mignon's post and maybe even a couple of tweets from people she retweeted. And I'll give my full thoughts on there. So let me just say again, I don't think domestic violence is something that should be taken lightly. My thoughts and comments are not to victim shame Danni. And just know that despite this being a fictional character, this is, something that happens in real life. So I want to recognize that. So let me read Mignon's post. And I hope there are two separate ones. So I guess I'm going to read, the longer one and then the shorter one. Okay. To everyone who's been told what you should have done after surviving an attack, who had to hear but after you didn't deserve. Everyone who had to hear anything other than support, unconditional love, and empathy, I'm sorry society is not where it should be. I'm sorry that happened to you, and I'm sorry some want to share in the blame, or excuse me, I'm sorry, I've been up since midnight and it's 8 o'clock. I'm sorry some of you want to share in the blame of possibly one of the darkest and most traumatic moments of your life. It's not your fault at all. You're not responsible for what they did to you. You are a survivor. You are beautiful and worthy. You are supported, and not all of us feel that way. I hope this episode wasn't too triggering. Twitter is a zoo, but you aren't their opinion. I take my responsibility as a storyteller seriously, and I will do all I can to fight for voices like yours and to continue to do all I can to humanize you on and off screen. I love you, Mignon. Then there's another post where it says, and I'm going to try to not say certain words because YouTube pretty much flags certain words that are said, but you can see it on screen. Virgin women get assaulted, and the R word. Sober women, fully clothed women, quiet women, strong women, unfriendly women. Women are assaulted, and the R word, regardless of decency. The narrative that what you do prevents someone else's choices is why we are still vulnerable, and it's still happening. It's the narrative of the oppressor to distract us from who is actually at fault. The culture and mindset that tells women we had a part to play in our own victimization, rather than teaching boys to respect our no, instead of teach us how not to get R word or assaulted. And then she put a tweet up. I don't care how you spin it or preface it. Saying that happened because Danni brought a stranger home is a problem. Millions of men would never do that. I get, maybe I'm reading the tweet wrong, but millions of men would never do that. So I guess that's saying millions of men would not bring a stranger home, like if it was a woman. This mentality is why women don't come forward. We shame them for a man's bad behavior. Stop victim blaming. Look, okay. I'm a man, okay? So that's I feel like that's the strike one against me when I talk about this subject. It's like, how dare you, a man, talk about what a woman should have done in that situation? I get that. This is where actually here's one retweet she posted. This is from a Twitter user that follows replied to Mignon. Exactly. And folks saying he shouldn't have hit her, but don't even realize that but negates whatever comes before it. There is no but. He should not have treated Danni that way. Hard stop. Let me just say this. Yes, he should not have laid hands on her, but I will get to that in a second. And another person, as a survivor of domestic violence, watching this episode was so triggering. Reading some of the tweets is baffling. If you are experiencing or ever experienced domestic violence, please know that you're seen, you're worth, you're amazing, you matter, and I'm praying for your freedom. Now I'm going to read, and I posted this on Facebook and my YouTube community tab yesterday. So I'm just going to read through it and go from there. And like I said, I know this is a touchy subject, but this does remind, and I know the two situations are not the same, but this does remind me of Mignon's reaction to how fans felt about Danni and how she handled Preston last season. Okay, now I'm just going to read my post word for word because I pretty much laid out everything I thought of this. All right. So I said, can we talk about the Danni situation? I noticed that Mignon has been posting about the cliffhanger after the last episode aired. For me, it kind of feels like the Preston situation, like I just talked about. You know, the whole thing about him being a grown man and not educating himself on black women, etc. Basically ignoring the fact that Preston only wants to date you, Danni, not every black woman on the planet. You know, the fact that it seems like Danni expected Preston to know everything there is to know about black women, but what happened to individuality? You know, like Danni is a black woman, but not all black women are, not all people in general think alike. Like you can have two white people, two Asians, two black people, but that doesn't mean they think and act the same way. That doesn't mean they practice, certain traditions of that said culture, or they're offended by the same things. Danni is a unique individual. So it makes sense that Preston would want to focus on how can I be the best man to love and cater to your needs, Danni, not just as a black woman, but as your own individual person. So, after the Danni thing, after the Jonah thing, that's kind of how I felt about the lengthy post she was making, pretty much calling out those who dared to say it was partly Danni's fault for why she got slapped. I think the conversation gets a bit out of hand when talking about Danni's date gone wrong, because there are some people that want to compare to all levels of domestic violence. Some would go, you can't say Danni should not have brought Jonah back to her house to excuse what happened, because that is what stops women from coming forward. Men do the same thing too, etc. Basically, what was in her tweets and whatnot. That's not how I think the situation should be viewed. As an isolated situation, I think Danni did a few things wrong. And like I said before, she didn't deserve to get called out of her name or slapped. I'm talking about the red flags. Just the fact that how they met at the airport, his crazy ex-wife, the fact that he already has a kid, those little things should just tell you, like, I don't know if I want to get involved with that, because if I start dating this guy, then, me and the ex-wife are going to have to cross paths, and we didn't get started off on the right foot to begin with. Then on top of that, when they got to the bar, Jonah let his intentions be made known from the get-go that basically, he's the one buying the food and the drinks. Danni, isn't going to just get him for free. Basically, he wants, a little something in return. And Danni has been so in love with the idea of a hot girl summer that she isn't using her good judgment. And from there, she invited the guy back to her place, a guy she barely knew. We saw her willingly unlock the door and invite him in for a seat. So it wasn't like he followed her home or forced his way into the apartment. Now, if we would have got a scene like that at the bar, the conversation is, going all right. But Danni kind of gets the vibe that, what, I'm not feeling this the way I thought I would. And then, Jonah makes it clear, like, no, you're not just going to get up and walk away. Like, you just want to get a dine and dash where you just come in, you get the drinks and you get the food, and then that's it. Hey, you know what? I want a little something more. That kind of stuff is different. That would insinuating that, okay, yeah, there's no way that Danny's cool with this guy coming over. Now, as the night moved on, the guy clearly wasn't doing as good a job at waxing Danny's behind like he thought, and Danni asked him to leave, which I thought was a good move. As Andy said, look, if you're not feeling it, you know what? Get the guy up out of there. You need to tell him to go. And of course, things took a turn when Jonah got in his feelings and called Danni out of her name. Completely uncalled for. Messed up on so many levels. Did Danni have a right to be upset? Absolutely. However, and this is the part where I know where people are going to be like, oh, here we go. You're victim shaming. You're glad she got hit. All I'm saying is she should have gracefully taken that L, shown Jonah to the door, and deleted his number. But that's not what happened. Now, I know this part's going to give me some flack, but Danni's known for running her mouth, being over the top, and getting that last word in. In the situation, she should have been a bigger person. Pun intended, considering Jonah isn't that big of a guy himself. And let Jonah talk his mess and leave. Yes, I know in this situation, it would have been incredibly tough for him to be talking shit to Danni in her own home. However, she was better off taking the L. There was a moment where we saw Danni going like, you know what? Don't do it, Danni. Don't do it. Fine. You know what? I'm going to do it. And then she basically called him out for how bad he is in bed and his lack of length. But that wasn't all. Because from there, Danni did a freaking filibuster on his lack of a penis. And one more time calling her out of her name, saying, get the F out of my house, backhand on the bed. And then, of course, moving into the preview for next week, Danni's like, this can't be happening. Oh, it is. Now say you're sorry. Okay. Now, overall, I think I'd have more sympathy for Danni if this story was written better. I said this last week. I didn't care for the cliffhanger. It felt incredibly forced for the sake of drama. I know it was said by a couple of the cast, Mignon and Ebony, if I'm not mistaken, about this being like the darkest season yet. I just don't like... I'm not saying I don't like this storyline because of the domestic violence. I don't like this storyline because it just really came out of nowhere. If it had better build up, I would be more intrigued. Like, oh my God, how is Danni going to get into this? Get out of this mess. But again, I know people like victim shamer. She kind of put herself in this position. I can't get over the fact that a few episodes ago, you got Danni guilt tripping Andy for, being with Mandingo Gary while Sabrina's in jail and just nagging Andy over and over again about going to the office, go see Robin. Sabrina's in jail. You need to help her out. Basically nagging her for legal help. However, it's cool for Danni to go out to have food and drinks to make her own self feel better. While in the meantime, Andy was sitting with Fatima's cousin, getting involved in some mob gangster shit to even get a chance at seeing Sabrina, in jail. And what's Danni doing? Having hot girl summer. And the thing is, I wouldn't really care about Danni doing this if she hadn't been so hard on Andy about it. It's basically like, you need to try harder. You need to do this. Danni can't do anything legally. She can't, because of the fact that she doesn't know people in the, law enforcement and whatnot that can help out. She was going to call Logan, but remember, Andy quickly shut that down, because you try to call Logan for help, you might unknowingly incriminate Sabrina, making the situation worse for her. So really, there's nothing Danni can do. But it's the fact that she's constantly pressing Andy to do more, to try harder, that's making it annoying. And that's why it just doesn't look good to me for Danni to be out, living her best life, in bed with a guy and whatnot, while Andy's the one who's, doing what she can to make things happen. All right, so in the next episode, we don't know what happens in between Jonah slapping Danni and Danni ending up at the law firm. Some people are theorizing, what if Danni did something to Jonah? Because, when she's in the office, because Fatima takes Andy to, Andy's office, walks her in there. And I'm guessing Danni showed up to the law firm. Fatima kind of checked her in and let her into Andy's office. She went to get Andy to come back to talk with her friend, because Fatima is shown in the promos saying it doesn't look good or it looks bad. So then Andy's freaking out. Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay? And Danni, with shades on, insinuating that she possibly has a black eye, she goes, Andy, I need a lawyer. And again, I really don't feel anything, because of the fact that Logan told Danni to tell Sabrina she needs to get a good lawyer, and Danni didn't do that. Now you have Danni into some shit she got herself into, and now she's going, Andy, I need a lawyer. And to wrap things up, I was really thinking that Preston was going to pop up at some point, either during the dinner or the apartment scene. I honestly thought he was going to show up, but he's better off staying in Texas. I mean, with all this mess going on here, if it takes something this traumatic for Danni to realize that this hot girl summer thing isn't a good, thing to live her life by, and she decides to go limping back to Preston, I think that's pretty bad, because of the fact that it just, once again, no apologies for how she's been acting or how she's been treating Preston for the past couple of seasons. The fact that he's walked in on her on 2 occasions, and both times she was with another dude, just after having sex with him. Not to mention interrupting all of his dates. And because she got into some shit, now she wants to, give it all up to go back, with the Preston. And it just feels like the men in most of these situations, not all of them, are the consolation prize. A good man is thrown to the curb for, a quickie with some random dude. And then when it turns out bad, you want to go back to the, I guess you could say the nice guy. It's just messed up. So let me say this much, just to wrap things up. I didn't expect this video to be too long, but I want to make sure that I get across as, clearly as possible. Danni didn't deserve to get hit or called out of her name, but I do think there were a lot of red flags she should have not ignored when it came to Jonah. Now, you could also make the argument, well, Jeremy, you talking about Danni not running her mouth and going on and all about a small PP and whatnot. Who's to say he wouldn't have hit Danni anyway before he left the apartment? You are absolutely right. We don't know. I mean, as soon as he got dressed, because he was kind of tipsy and pissed off, he could have backhanded her still. I'm not saying that's not a possibility, but we can't really talk about what ifs. We can only talk about what we see. And to me, it just felt like Danni really just had to, go on and on and on about how bad in bed he is and whatnot, which led to the backhand. So, again, don't really feel anything for this situation. That's not to say that I can't see why this scene wouldn't be, or excuse me, I can see how this scene would be triggering for some fans who have either seen or dealt with domestic violence. But I'm talking about in terms of how Tyler didn't really do a good job writing this storyline into the series right now. It just felt out there, just out of the blue. I know it just felt like being inserted for the sake of drama, and I think that it could have been implemented better. So I don't really feel sorry for Danni. I don't. I'm sorry. I mean, well, no, I'm not sorry. That's an honest opinion. I do feel like it is a dangerous thing to automatically shut down any opposing opinions for people who have thoughts about how Danni could have handled this differently, because that's the thing about Mignon when it comes to defending Danni. It's always about what the men shouldn't do or what the men should do. It's never about what Danni should have done in these situations. You know, like, shouldn't this be a cautionary tale about inviting strangers back to your apartment? About not just laying in bed, or just, you know, not bed hopping, having someone different every single day at your, or every single night in your bed at your apartment, just because you can't handle your emotions based on another guy. Like, you know, the Preston thing has her emotionally messed up, so she's just gonna, you know, jump in bed with some random guy she barely even knows. So yes, there are guys out there who are monsters. There are women out there who are monsters. And this isn't me trying to make it, you know, men versus women, but there are a lot of men who don't come forward about, you know, domestic violence that they receive from women because it wouldn't look good. You know, it would be met with ridicule and whatnot. Johnny Depp, perfect example. And hell, and I even brought this up during the tail end of Zatima. You know, when Zach told Fatima about how Bryce tried to make a move on him, unwanted, you know, physical touch and contact by another man, and it was laughed at. And even I admitted, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I laughed when I first saw the scene because Fatima really, you know, just made that scene. But then when I watched it back, I'm like, yeah, it is kind of messed up that, you know, Zach's feelings really aren't taken in consideration here. He's being ridiculed for being sexually harassed. So I don't think it's a good thing to completely ignore ignore Danny's shortcomings, which was ignoring the red flags. So that's pretty much my stance on it. And I'm interested to see where things are going next week, because it looks like this is going to be a big story arc prior to the mid-season finale. So what do you think about it? Do you think Mignon was right with her comments about how, you know, we shouldn't add a but to Danny's actions leading up to the slap and just blame it all on the guy? Or should we look at it from the perspective of, you know what, Danny shouldn't have done A, B, and C, which led to the slap? Because again, she didn't deserve to do it, or excuse me, she didn't deserve to get slapped. But when you look at the scenario, I think Danny should have done a better job at reading the room. The guy was already pissed off, should have let him leave, talk his shit, and that would have been that. But you decided to do the Danny thing, which was run that mouth, and then you got popped in the mouth. So there's that. So I know this might be a bit divisive, especially with over 75% of my audience being female, but I hope I made my point clear that even if you disagree with me, you can't say that Jeremy didn't leave anything on the table. He pretty much broke it down in terms of how he felt about the scene and, you know, how things turned out. So let's see how things, you know, unfold in a couple of days. And I am hopeful that we will have some, you know, mature and civil conversations in the comments section below. So there we go. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. And I'll catch you in the next one.